How you doing? I'm Callan and this is Slapped Ham. Today we're looking at some super creepy stories. From a man discovered underneath a couple's bed to a woman found living on the top shelf of a man's closet. We count 6 creepers caught living in other people's homes. But before we get into it, remember to hit that subscribe button for more awesome creepy content just like this.
Theodore Coneys was born on the 10th of November 1882. He suffered from poor health and was told by doctors not to expect his 18th birthday. He didn't finish high school and had a series of jobs, but spent much of his life homeless. He was a frail man who resented the way he was treated by others, often expressing that he wanted a place where he could be alone and free from the judgment of others. In September 1941, Coneys visited Philip Peters, an old acquaintance who lived in Denver, Colorado. Coneys went there with the intention of asking Peters for some money, but when he arrived, Peters wasn't home, so he broke into the house. In a closet, he found a small door that led into a cramped attic space. Coneys lived in that space undetected for more than 5 weeks. He would occasionally venture out for food when he was sure Peters wasn't around. One day, when Coneys thought Peters had left the house, he made his way into the kitchen to take some food from the refrigerator. However, Peters was in the other room napping. He heard a noise and went to the kitchen to investigate. Peters confronted the startled Coneys, who clubbed him to death with an old pistol before returning to the safety of his attic space. When Peters failed to visit a neighbour's house for dinner that evening, the police were called. They found no sign of forced entry and couldn't explain what had happened. They noted the small door in the closet but believed that a normal-sized man couldn't have fit in such a tiny space. Soon after, Peters' wife, who had been in hospital recovering from a broken hip, returned to live in the house. The frail Mrs. Peters hired a housekeeper to help out with daily duties. However, it wasn't long before the housekeeper began to notice things going missing, and she swore that she would sometimes see strange shadows in the hallways late at night. Convinced that the house was haunted, the housekeeper quit, forcing Mrs. Peters to move to western Colorado to live with her son. Coneys remained in the empty house, and neighbours would often report ghostly noises as well as strange lights turning on and off in the middle of the night. On July 30th, 1942, police were performing a routine check of the property when they heard a lock click on the second floor. They quickly ran upstairs just in time to see Coneys' leg protruding from the door in the closet. He was taken into custody and confessed to the murder of Philip Peters. In 2012, Tracy, a resident of South Carolina, thought that her house was haunted. She would often hear strange noises coming from the roof, and nails would sometimes pop out from her bedroom ceiling. Concerned, she asked her sons to investigate. Inside the attic, they discovered a man sleeping in one corner. The man was Tracy's ex-boyfriend, whom she had broken up with 12 years earlier. He was recently released from prison and had been living in her attic for about 2 weeks. He'd packed several old coats into the heating unit and was sleeping inside to stay warm. The creepiest part was that the man had positioned himself next to an air vent that allowed him to watch Tracy as she slept. It was thought that the man must have gained entry to Tracy's house when she was out, climbing into the attic from a door in the hallway. When the man was confronted, he fled the house before police could arrive. In 2008, a man in Kasuya, Japan began to notice food going missing in his home. Confused, he decided to set up a surveillance camera that relayed images to his cell phone. One day, while he was out, he viewed the footage and was shocked to see a strange woman wandering around the inside of his house. He promptly reported the break-in to the police, who arrived at his residence only to find that it was still securely locked. Once inside, they searched the house and eventually found 58-year-old Tatsuko Horikawa hiding on the top shelf of the man's closet in a room he rarely used. Horikawa told police that she'd been living in the closet shelf for more than a year. She had entered the house one day when the man left without locking the door. Police described the intruder as looking neat and clean. When the man was out, she would come down from the shelf to eat and even shower before promptly returning to her hiding spot. In 2013, 73-year-old Velma Kellen was shocked to find out that someone had been living under her house. Kellen had just purchased a new furnace and couldn't figure out why she was unable to keep warm. She called a repairman who discovered that someone had been living in the crawl space beneath her home. They had cut open her heating ducts so that the warm air would circulate under the house. When the repairman told Kellen the disturbing news, she realised there had actually been signs that she wasn't alone for some time. The back gate was always open after she'd closed it, and she often smelt the pungent smell of marijuana smoke lingering throughout her house. Strangely, the unwanted visitor was quiet enough to have never alerted Kellen's 3 dogs. After the repairman fixed Kellen's heating, the mysterious squatter vanished and never returned. In 1913, 33-year-old Wahlburger Dolly Osterreich, wife of wealthy textile manufacturer Fred William Osterreich, met a young man by the name of Otto Sandhuber. The two quickly became lovers and began meeting in secret at Sandhuber's boarding room as well as a nearby hotel. Sandhuber, who was 16 years Dolly's junior, would sometimes visit her at her Milwaukee residence, but when the neighbours grew suspicious, they alerted her husband. To avoid further suspicion, Dolly suggested that Sandhuber would quit his job and move into her attic. Sandhuber agreed, as the hours of solitude would give him time to pursue his dream of becoming a writer. By 1918, Sandhuber had been living in the Osterreich's attic for 5 years. He was gaining work as a writer and had several stories published under a pen name. Fred, however, was beginning to grow suspicious. He noticed that food and cigars were going missing, and he often thought he saw strange shadows passing in the hallways at night time. Later that year, Fred decided to move to Los Angeles. However, Dolly was strangely insistent that their new house have an attic. After much searching, they eventually found a suitable house, and Dolly quickly sent Sandhuber to settle in before the couple arrived. By 1922, Fred and Dolly's relationship had deteriorated, and on the 22nd of August, they got into a particularly nasty argument. Fearing that Fred may harm Dolly, Sandhuber rushed downstairs with 2 of Fred's pistols and shot him in the chest, killing him instantly. Dolly and Sandhuber quickly hatched a plot to make the murder look like it was a botched robbery. Sandhuber took Fred's diamond watch, locked Dolly in a closet, and tossed the key aside before returning to his refuge in the attic. The police initially suspected that Dolly had shot her husband, but with no knowledge of Sandhuber's presence, they were at a loss to explain how she could have locked herself in the cupboard. Dolly inherited her husband's fortune and used it to buy a new house, one with an even more spacious attic. Sandhuber moved in but remained in the attic to avoid police suspicion. During the investigation, Dolly had also begun dating her lawyer, Herman Shapiro. On one occasion, she even gave him the very same diamond watch that she'd claimed to have been stolen during the robbery. Shapiro recognized the watch, but Dolly insisted that she'd found it under a seat cushion. In 1923, the police found out about the watch and arrested Dolly. During the hearings, Dolly instructed Shapiro to take groceries to her house, saying that they were for her attic-dwelling vagabond half-brother. Sandhuber had now been living in Dolly's attic for more than 10 years. He welcomed the opportunity to talk with the lawyer. However, Shapiro suspected that something was afoot and kicked Sandhuber out of the house. Terrified and confused, Sandhuber fled to Canada, where he changed his name to Walter Klein and eventually married another woman. In 1930, Dolly and her lawyer-turned-lover, Herman Shapiro, had a falling out. Jaded, Shapiro went to the police and informed them about the mysterious man that had been living in Dolly's attic. The police quickly arrested Dolly and Sandhuber, who, by coincidence, had recently moved back to LA. On July 1st, 1930, Sandhuber was found guilty of manslaughter. However, the charges were dropped as the statute of limitations had expired. To avoid the ensuing media attention, Sandhuber fled Los Angeles and completely disappeared. Dolly's trial ended in a hung jury, and in 1936 the indictment against her was dropped. She soon found a new lover and they stayed together for 30 years. Before we get to that number 1 spot and take a look at a story about an intruder that lived under their victim's bed, remember to hit that subscribe button and turn on channel notifications. That way you'll be completely up to date with all our latest creepy content. In 2006, Carlo Castellanos Faria developed an obsession with a fellow employee named Michelle Freudenberg-Onion. Both worked at a hospital in Washington, D.C. Castellanos Faria as a valet and Freudenberg-Onion as a director of physical therapy. Freudenberg-Onion would often turn her keys over to the valet, who one day decided to make a copy of her house key. He then used the key to break into her apartment. Once inside, Castellanos Faria set up a camera on the desk in Freudenberg-Onion's bedroom and hid under the bed. He was discovered 2 days later when Freudenberg Onion's boyfriend noticed something moving on the floor. He looked under the bed and saw Castellanos Faria staring back at him. He then beat the intruder with a flashlight and managed to subdue him before police arrived. During their search, police found a bag under the bed belonging to Castellanos Faria that contained condoms, gloves, a power cord and a videotape that showed him setting up the camera on the desk and then hiding under the bed. A search of Castellanos Faria's residence also uncovered 6 framed pictures of Freudenberg Onion, along with a video of her first wedding that Castellanos Faria had obtained by breaking into her ex-husband's house.
Well, there's another episode down. Thank you so much for watching. Now in the comments section below, let us know how you would feel if you discovered someone's been living in your home. As always, slap that upward facing thumb as well because it lets us know you're enjoying the content. And that's it for me. I'll see you all next time.